Hello, everyone. My name is Keenan. Welcome to the October 7th, 2021 weekly DXdao community call. If you haven't yet heard, DXdao community calls are now a weekly endeavor, replacing our previous bi-weekly recap calls. We did this in an effort to regularly and consistently involve the community in the fun and interesting DXdao information and discussion we have going on. Today, we're going to be touching on a couple of brief squad updates, particularly DXGovDev and DXVentures. We'll be calling attention to the Q3 Discord rep boost, discussing Swapper Arbitrum Epoch 3, and touching on the officially resumed DXD buybacks. Let's start with the squad updates here. We have DXGovDev folk around. I know we have a couple traveling, but it sounds like Ross will be available here.
You can't hear me.
I think I'm hearing you now. Try talking again. I think having some connection issues, maybe.
Should we just do one from here?
Try for here, maybe from mine. Maybe
Okay.
it's good.
Wait, can you hear me now?
But they haven't accepted me yet.
Stage is going crazy. Yeah, we hear you, Dave.
Okay, right, so you can hear me as well then.
Yes, correct.
Okay. I have to do this without audio because Dave's got the audio of the thing I'm speaking into, and then oh wait, no, good point. Oh, this is a mess. Sorry.
No worries, guys.
Shut one of them off.
Okay, yeah, so I'll give a quick update on DXGov dev stuff. So I don't think we've had an official update on the community call yet for this, so I'll just start from the beginning. Essentially, we've been building, well, the most recent update you'll have seen will have been from Dxdow. He gave a demo through the app he's been building for a good few months now. This is our governance application to replace Alchemy so that we have additional control over our voting machine and the UI for that, allowing us to expand our governance platform essentially to whatever we want. But we now have an official GovDev team. So it's gone from 1 member to, I believe now, 5 active contributors working full-time on the application. So we've developed a roadmap. I'll put that in the chat afterwards. Wasn't around to prepare it beforehand. If anyone wants to walk through that, I know there's a recording of the initial demonstration we did there as well. So the first steps we'll be doing are mostly around guilds for Swapper token as well as DXD token, and just a lot of UI UX improvements. Since the app was built mostly as a sort of proof of concept MVP initially, there's a lot of work to do on the UI to make it a much better experience for the entire DXdao organization. Currently it's mostly a power user focused application, but soon we'll be expanding it to be a lot simpler to use. Also, the main goal as well of creating the application, as well as having more control specifically, is to move forward with Gov 2.0, which we had a signal proposal for a number of months ago that went through, but we haven't really moved on with it from a development perspective. But now with the full team, we'll be sort of pushing forward with this, and you should hear some more updates soon about the status of that and how we're getting along, and hopefully soon we'll have that properly holographic consensus governance 2.0 model working in production.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ross. Of course, any open questions, feel free to shoot in the chat and or request to speak. If not, we can move along and come back if necessary. Thank you again, Ross. Moving on to the next squad, DXVentures. I believe we have Tammy here today to speak a bit to Opolis and ETH Global, as well as DXdao.
Hey guys, so just giving some updates on kind of what DXVentures / the BizDev squad's been up to. So our first allocation from the DX Ventures initial budget of the 1 million allocation was to Opolis. And they're working on kind of like a new way to pay contractors that work in Web3, specifically like anything to do with crypto, DeFi especially. We thought it was an interesting project, and we just received our tokens a few weeks ago. The tokens are actually located on an alternative chain. So we've been kind of figuring out what to do with the tokens, whether or not we want to stake them in Opolis's current staking system, which would then kind of accrue more tokens as rewards. And eventually we could use those tokens in governance at a certain point, or we can actually put the tokens into a pool. Some other stakeholders and community members in Opolis have opted to pool their tokens, I believe on mainnet, as well as some considerations for Arbitrum as well, maybe even on Swapper. So Sky actually has been like updating a post on our DAO Talk forum regarding this, and just trying to get feedback from everyone in the community regarding, what people think would be the best option. It would seem like right now we would probably get more like yield, I guess you can say, by just staking the tokens in governance through Opolis. But there's still other options that might be cool long term, like with Swapper and things like that. So yeah, take a look, and if you have any feedback or comments on that, this is actually just the first allocation. The tokens are going to be vesting from Opolis from our initial kind of grant investment over the next, I believe, 2 years. So yeah, that's the first update. The other updates are I think we had a BizDev kind of DX Ventures proposal from Thesis. I think the link to that pitch is in DAO Talk as well. It's a new project. And we actually are going to have another proposal and pitch from DiamondDAO. It's a new DAO that's using the DAO House platform, and they are creating this project called Chainverse. We kind of did like an alternative proposal setup this time. We're trying to like get people more informed about basically the pitches before we do them, just so people can have like good questions and kind of get the conversation started. So Amphibali, who's like kind of the main point of contact for Chainverse, put the pitch up in DAO Talk. I welcome everyone to take a look, but basically they're trying to do an improved version of like a DAO governance data platform. So trying to have like unbiased data on governance for DAOs as like metrics basically that DXdao could use on our own governance, as well as other platforms that have different types of DAO governance associated with them, and to see how active and engaged the community is. Aside from that, I think there's some interesting updates with ETH Global. I'm not as involved with that project. I know we're working on that as well. So if anyone else on stage has any info regarding that, you're welcome to jump in. But otherwise, that's like the main update. Like DX Ventures is just kind of chugging along. So if there's any interesting projects that anyone's aware of, or anyone else you think that would be a good fit for the community to get a grant, let us know.
Thank you very much, Tammy. Not sure if anyone had any info for ETH Online. I know Sky was kind of the lead coordinator for that, and he won't be able to make it today. If not, I do have a couple questions left with me, if you're okay with that, Tammy. First one.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
First one is, I guess, somewhat answered by yourself already, but are there any other interesting projects on DX Ventures' radar?
Yeah, so I actually did a while back a post, and this is when I say a while back, I think it was like a month and a half ago, from ETH Paris. We actually participated in the quote unquote like VC, ETH VC round, just as a DAO, of course. So we're giving out grants. We're not like traditional VC. So there's quite a few interesting projects from that. Some of them I think are still open rounds, but a lot of them, of course, at this point are closed off. One project I'm personally interested in, that I'm brainstorming on, is this metaverse project called Atlantis World. They're basically creating like a 2D option for like metaverse avatars for DeFi. So there's actually a lot of really cool builds that are happening right now within Atlantis World with like Yearn, Aave. They're all basically trying to gamify ways to like attach DeFi projects to the metaverse in like an easy uploadable format. So I've been exploring with Atlantis World basically a way to connect our products like Swapper, Omen, eventually Carrot, to this metaverse to kind of onboard through like a rabbit hole type of like learning gamification process to like get people more interested in DeFi. Any other questions, Keenan?
Yeah, I do have one more here. I guess maybe not directly relevant to you, but is there an update on DXdao Polygon integration to interact with Opolis?
So I think that's more of a technical question. I don't think we're like executing that. Something that we have discussed that I think's super interesting and kind of overlaps not just with Opolis but other DX Ventures kind of projects. An example is Atlantis World. Their base is actually on Polygon. They're expanding to mainnet and eventually to Arbitrum, which we have some interest in. But the idea is that, if we actually do create some sort of base on Polygon, it's a great opportunity for the DXdao base on Polygon. Whether, we're really trying to focus our resources right now, technically speaking. So it's kind of like we need to coordinate and make sure we can actually execute on that. Otherwise, we're going to have to figure out another alternative, less decentralized, which is not as optimal way to deal with the Opolis base for these tokens.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tammy. I'm not sure John or anyone from GovDev had any comment on potential Polygon integration. Otherwise, we can move on.
Yeah, just echoing what Tammy said. In addition to that, just the general overhead, even from like the governance side of things that it takes to deploy a new base. I think we're still trying to get like the legs under DXvote on Arbitrum, and it would make sense to kind of get that operating more efficiently and like stably, and then we could maybe think about what the next step would be in terms of further base deployment. But I think, yeah, like utilizing some of the multi-sigs that are in place for some occasional things that can't be done with the governance directly, that could, I think, be extended to Polygon as well. And I think Sky was looking into the ability to deploy Gnosis safes with the same address across multiple chains. So I think that is also in the works, which with some things across different chains, but doesn't really solve the governance problem, but might be able to help with the work token or things that need to be done there. And also just on another note, it's kind of funny because it has a similar name, but there's a project that I think is also pretty cool that DX Ventures is in touch with, which is called Atlantis, which is a governance framework. And that's sort of just in the prototype stage. The developers putting together some of the smart contract framework. And that was somebody that Sky got in touch with, and it looked promising, but we're kind of just in conversations with them as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, John. If there's no final questions, we'll move on to the next topic here. Cool. Let's chat Discord rep boosts. I have a bit of a spiel here. So with the introduction of the DXdao Discord server, an initiative was proposed to get more community members involved in governance. At the time, I called it a governance gateway drug, which I thought was quite fun. This is called the DXdao Discord Rep Boost. They function as a quarterly allocation to those involved in the community, kind of a way for us to leave the door open to those involved in the community to participate in our governance. We had a first and second round in Q1 and 2 of 2021. Those both went successfully and had majority claims, which was very nice to see. And as of a couple of days ago, we're back again for quarter 3. The snapshot was taken on the 30th of September. This needs to pass through governance because there's been some major changes, including the Discord roles and their attainability. We removed distribution to level 1 and had some slight reductions to the upper and lower bounds. And this is reflected in the signal proposal on chain now. Let me see if I can grab a link for it here. Here we are. As a community member that uses Discord, as all of you are, the first thing you should do is check that your handle is in the snapshot thread. This is in DAO Talk, also posted in the chat. If your name is found there, then congrats. Once the signal proposal passes on chain, you'll be welcome to create a proposal to claim your rep on Xdai. This will obviously be done through a Discord notification to start. We'll be granting an updated guide to those who are eligible. The entitlement is in mainnet rep, but it's obviously highly advised that community members request a rep via Dxdow and Xdai chain. Gas fees are significantly reduced, and a majority of the contributor and signal proposals have found their home on this base for the past couple of months. Anyone's welcome to reach out to myself or in the Dxdow social channels to request a small amount of Xdai if they want to make their rep requests and don't have any. I see level 10 hog, pink hog, is here with us. So that's a quick call of attention to that initiative. Sorry to those that are hard stuck. Level 7, Connor. I have a couple questions that were left with me. The rep percentage has been reduced each quarter. Why is this? Obviously, the rep percentage has to be moved indicative of the difficulty of reaching the level. At the start, it was much easier to reach level 10, and we moved that requirement down. And similarly to the lower levels, we made those a bit easier to obtain. So we moved the rep allocation down slightly to accommodate for those changes. And I have one more question left with me. Has the Discord rep boost replaced regular rep boosts? Maybe I'm not the one to answer that. I'm not sure if Chris is here. Chris, are you available?
Boom. Did I just get up on stage?
Welcome.
Yeah, I think so. I think primarily that was because before, when we started the rep boost, it was a monthly program, and it was kind of more on the forum and activity on the forum and recognizing people there. But since Discord, I think, has the ability to capture a lot of the activity that we want to be doing, I think it's a little bit more automated way of doing it. Although I do think we should still be doing kind of rep boost nominations ad hoc for different types of actions and contributions to the community, people recognizing them and kind of sharing it to the community. But perhaps the automated way of doing it every quarter is the best way for ensuring we get like the wider, broader distribution.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I guess kind of having the ad hoc rep boost, I think, is important as well, because not everyone that we obviously would like to distribute rep to is available and or participating actively in the Discord. Ad hog for pink hog. Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. And I guess keeping you here on the stage, let's move on to the DXD buyback, expanding our purchasing options, and the now resumed buyback, of course.
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of great work in the last, 24, 48 hours, but really over the last week. So just as a refresher, buyback program been going on since May, has been using the GP relayer on both mainnet and Xdai, but now just on Xdai, and that relies on another network of solvers to actually match the trades, and there were some issues with that. The community has Gnosis has stopped support on Gnosis Protocol v1, so it makes it a little bit more difficult. But the community has been providing that infrastructure itself. And anyway, the last week and a half, it kind of been troubleshooting and finding and getting that back online. And just yesterday, we were able to start and execute those orders again. And I think the proposals have already, the orders have already been filled, and you can kind of see the results, I think, in some of the price action over the last 12 or 16 hours on DXD. It is interesting to see the different pools of DXD and how they interact, right? Because Arbitrum obviously is the biggest DXD ETH pool, but it's really hard to get, or a long time to get that DXD out of Arbitrum, so a lot of it is there. Xdai is like the smallest of the DXD pools, but that's actually where the buyback's being conducted. So it's kind of like there's this suction on DXD from Xdai, but given gas costs, especially over the last couple of days, it's making bridging between those pretty difficult. So it's just a dynamic, I think, to watch. I think it will change a little bit too as swapper rewards kick in on Xdai next Thursday. So maybe that pool is a little bit more, but it really, right now you can see as the anytime there's a buyback, the price kind of will change, and there will be some type of arbitrage opportunity between the different pools, but a lot of it depends on gas prices for getting between those. But yeah, so this is the start of the 3rd million of the DXD buyback. So we passed the signal proposal 2 weeks ago, and then we're just now gearing this up. So we'll have updates in the sheet there going forward. And then, yeah, there's also some kind of chatter about, the long-term framework for the buyback itself, whether that's like the technical implementation. A lot of the conversation over the last week was, what if GPV1 and the solvers don't work? What are our other options? So there's actually a post in the forum I put up of like the 3 big kind of options we're considering now that could end up replacing the GP relayer as the method to conduct the buyback. Those are still like a work in progress, require some more technical work, but I think it's important that we expand those capabilities. So questions on how we kind of implement and execute the buyback on what network is another question too. And then there's also like, well, what's the framework or the decisions, or like, when does Dxdow decide to do a buyback and in what manner? And kind of those questions. I think those are larger questions that we need to kind of think on and probably create a larger framework on.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Chris. Extending an open invitation to Connor and or Pink Hog, who are very commonly involved in the discussion of the buyback. If you'd like to hop on stage, feel free to click the request button. Otherwise, I do have some questions here that were left with me.
Thanks for the patience, I guess, over the last 2 weeks. This is kind of putting everything together with like the GP relayer. There's a lot of different pieces. I'm not really familiar with everything, but just seeing all the little pieces that had to be put together to execute it. Yeah, it's a lot of fine details.
Excellent. Looks like Connor and Pink Hog are good for today. Starting with, what is going to happen to the 4 or 5 buybacks that were ready to pass?
When you say ready to pass, did they pass?
This was say I didn't make this one, so I'm not too sure. I think they're referring to the queued buybacks that were ready to be executed.
So those could have been executed whenever, right? And when they're executed, they would just look at the swapper WETH price. I'm sorry, the DXD WETH price on swapper and place an order at that price. So they could have been executed when they were passed. Some I think were passed like on Monday, Tuesday. It looks like no one had executed them. If they had executed them, the orders could have been placed, but they wouldn't have been able to be filled at all. So I think right now, of the last 2 days, 2 proposals, I believe, buyback proposals that passed early in the week were actually executed. And that's like the buy orders that you see on Mesa and Y. There's been some activity there. I believe there was one more that can be executed or could be executed. And then there's another one that's set to pass in 36 hours. And I think we are, and actually I think just within the last 30 minutes, we just submitted the next buyback order to start that. So I think there's a good steady flow of them. I think will be coming in now that we've got everything set up. And there is, we could share it. I mean, there's like anyone can execute these orders and place them themselves. It's a little technical. It does require interacting with the contracts through Block Scout, but yeah, there's a guide for that I can find.
Excellent. On the hunt for the guide.
I got the how to sell into.
So maybe I'll let you maybe take a look after this last question, and you can post after the fact. One last one here with me. Has a proposal passed to use all 2,500 ETH from the buyback reserve? I assume they're referring to utilizing it in the buyback.
Yeah, I mean, there's no proposal that has passed that has moved those funds. I mean, I think the way, if you just kind of step back and look at it on like a technical level, the buyback reserve or the DXD contract has an owner, and that owner is DXdao. So DXdao could upgrade that contract and take the ETH and do something with it. So I think like there hasn't been a proposal that has done that. And I think that's kind of the ultimate way that wherever that ETH goes. I think there's a lot of discussion on like how exactly that gets done and what is the accounting for that. And I think that kind of ties into some of those broader questions I was saying before about when and under what conditions is like DXD being repurchased, and even kind of getting in some of like the revenue questions from the products, like how do we kind of create a more like tighter framework. Small like tangent, I've just been thinking about this a little bit. There has been a lot more discussion, I think, in some of the communities about like tokenomics. I saw Yearn just put something out there, so maybe something to think about as we get into some options on DXD. But Keenan, to answer your question, I think there is a lot of conversation and really some soft consensus in the community on the buyback, on that buyback reserve. But like ultimately, we need to have a proposal that like upgrades the contract and will do something with the ETH, and that will, when we do that proposal, we'll need to have a lot of details figured out.
Perfect. Thank you. I have one more question here from Thurf Noob in the chat. He asks, have you guys discussed about a way to avoid a void, no pun intended, I'm sure, after this buyback is over and the next one if approved?
How to avoid?
I assume he's referring to
yeah.
we had
like
a
avoid
time
avoid
between the last buyback.
It's a funny, yeah. I mean, I think there were kind of two issues with this one. One, the timing for the extension was a little delayed. Like there was like a 4 or 5 day overlap, and it actually, because the 1 million actually happened sooner. We had kind of projected it over like 7 weeks, and it ended up happening in like 5 weeks. So there was a kind of 4 or 5 day delay in when the extension proposal got passed, and then there was on top of this like kind of 7-day delay in terms of the technical working, and hopefully, we fixed both of those. And I think the more take a step back, we have like gotten much more efficient at this, like everybody, right? Even the people like following the buyback or tracking that, everyone kind of understands the general structure of how this is like implemented, and it just makes running things a lot more like smoothly. I mean, I was just thinking back to, I remember in June when we were just first doing this, I think like Hedgehog had a comment because the order time we had was like a week instead of a month or something. Like, so we weren't actually leaving the orders on there for that long. And that just made like perfect sense. We didn't really realize that, but it was only kind of through doing it and adjusting and iterating on things that like we got better. And so I think going forward, the buyback here, I think we are getting more efficient and at executing it. And I think that will continue.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any final questions here on the buyback? DX Hog.
Yeah, the DXD token split is interesting. I don't have any strong feelings on that.
I think it's worth a discussion, especially when we revisit tokenomics. I would be heavily in favor of a token split.
Yeah, I'm somewhat interested in it as well, and think it could be a positive thing.
Sarah says, why token split? I think the primary reason is just that large decimals are intimidating. Really, there isn't much optically more than that. Unit bias too strong by Streak, I believe, is the best way to frame it. You can kind of visualize this with Yearn, YFI, their high token price, low supply.
Yeah, it's like, do you fight the fight? I don't know, the unit bias. I feel like we give in now.
Cool, guys. Let's move on to the next topic here. Just making sure there's nothing final here on the buyback. I see taking a dump on the normies here in the chat. Let's chat Swapper Epoch 3. I have a post here. I'll post in the chat. Basically, this is the campaign adjustments discussion thread for the Swapper Epoch 3. It'd be great to get anyone involved with Swapper token and its emissions to share their opinions on the thread. There are a couple of minor changes I'll go over here. This is obviously proposed changes, and we're waiting for any feedback in the community. There's already been one post by Venki, and obviously looking for much more to make a final decision. The first change is ETH against wrapped Bitcoin from 10% to 12.5% of the emission. This is obviously because it is a very strong pair with good volume, and we want to keep prioritizing it. We had a slight reduction in DAI against ETH from 10 to 9%. This is just because DAI is very fresh on Arbitrum. There's much more USDC, and the DAI pool didn't get the kind of splash we were anticipating. The USDC pool was very, very much so effective in TVL and volume. So a very slight reduction to kind of help prioritize ETH against wrapped Bitcoin and then push for a parity between USDC and DAI in the coming couple of weeks. There was also a further reduction of the stable pair USDC USDT from 4% to 2.5%. This is a big discussion point I think we want to get people involved in. Right now, the USDC USD pool accounts for nearly, if not over 50% of Swapper Arbitrum TVL. Obviously, the original plan was to completely concede this pool as the volume is quite little, leaving it as a portal for the conversion of USDC to USDT. So there's a very important discussion to be had there surrounding the important or perceived value of TVL and what that exactly is worth to the community. So we proposed a gradual reduction slightly less than anticipated to 2.5% of the allocation. But would be open to obviously discussing what exactly that looks like for the future of the pair. We also had very slight reductions to RB against MIM and GNO against ETH. This is just because they were slightly underperforming as to what was anticipated. So leaving a slightly smaller allocation and hoping that the community catches up with that allocation before putting more Swapper emissions on it. Another thing worth noting is that those of you that were on this call would be aware that there is an IBBTC and Badger pool planned for Epoch 2. Obviously, now we are 1 week through Epoch 2 and there's no pool. What is happening there is they need some extra time to work on their vaults and get IBBTC bridged over to Arbitrum. I think Sky has the most notable information on this, but I do believe there is plans to launch those pools and vaults this coming Thursday at the start of Epoch 3, which would mean that we'd utilize Epoch 2 funds alongside Epoch 3 for their pools. Obviously, keep an eye on announcements. There'll be some formal communication about that coming in the coming week. And there's one more final thing we'd like to discuss, and that's being the extension of campaigns, particularly on Arbitrum for mainnet and Xdai. Xdai will be following single epochs to start as we get our footing on Xdai, but mainnet will follow 4 epochs in one campaign. Obviously, because mainnet is very gas intensive. We want users to be able to stake and unstake, not bi-weekly on a chain that it will cost them several $100s to do so. So expect a 4 epoch campaign on mainnet. But there is discussion to be had about Arbitrum. Obviously, on Epoch 3, we are still quite early in the emission schedule, so maybe not quite the time yet. I do believe Venki shared that he was not interested quite yet in merging of the epochs for Arbitrum, but there is something to say about the potential of merging 3 and 4, or in the future 4 and 5, for example, to help facilitate the lower yet still palpable gas costs on Arbitrum. So yeah, there's discussion we had there. Obviously, as I mentioned, mainnet and Xdai farms had to be moved back as a part of our proposal process, but we do have, as far as I know, a confirmed date now of next epoch. So that would be October 14th, Thursday. It should start the same time as this community call. So expect mainnet and Xdao farms and some communication on that in the coming couple of days. Yeah, I think that's my spiel. Not sure if there's any comments or anything I missed, Zet and or Chris.
Yeah, just to be explicit or clear on the mainnet and Xdao one. So those proposals came from mainnet and they've already been submitted. And so these will be the first time you can get Swapper outside of Arbitrum. And so there is a pool to farm Swapper that's launching next Thursday. So if anyone's interested in participating in that pool, whether that's on mainnet or Xdao, they will need to withdraw their Swapper from Arbitrum, and it takes 7 days to withdraw. So you would need to start that right now, actually.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you. Any final comments? Obviously, feel free to ask. We do have the forum post up and would appreciate any community feedback. Seeing a more level discussion in the chat here. If there's nothing else on that, we'll move on to open questions here. A bit early, anticipate the call to end slightly earlier as well. I do have one question, maybe John and or Tammy, that was left with me. With dev priorities shifted, when can we expect to focus on Omen and its guild again?
I guess I'll take that one. Yeah, I think the overarching plan here is to build momentum and therefore like improve recruiting on the development side. So it would be kind of the factors there would be like how busy are we with the other priorities, and then how successful are we recruiting new developers. So like I'm hopeful that we can return the focus to Omen in earnest, like sooner rather than later. I can't really put a date on that, but I would hope maybe by the end of this year.
Yeah, and I just want to add that, there is a lot of work still going on with Omen, but it's not regarding the technical side. And that's obviously the main focus, but there are definitely other improvements that are going into not only like research on Omen for the conditional token framework and just how to improve the overall user experience. There's a lot of work going on with branding as well right now. Yeah, so it's kind of this exploratory phase that we're going through. And of course, yes, if like there are developers who are interested in working on the conditional token framework, and we're very close to finishing the guild, but need to reprioritize right now with our other projects. Yeah, just like let us know. We're going to continue to pursue this, like John said, and hopefully wrap stuff up or start wrapping stuff up at the end of the year.
And in a sense, there is still even development work happening. Like I just am in the process of scheduling an audit for the updated farming contracts, which would be used with the Omen token, and the Swapper guild work that is in process is also like relevant to what's going to be deployed with Omen 2. So there's still things that are moving, but yeah, it's just not the primary focus, with governance and Swapper being those for now. But yeah, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Excellent. Thank you, both Tammy and John. That marks the end of the questions that were left with me and our regular agenda. I'm not sure if anyone on the call here had any topics they'd like to discuss, even just for fun. Otherwise, we can end the call a couple minutes early. Keeping an eye on the chat here. We have Plankton Limo asking thoughts on ETH.limo. Is it Limo or Limo? I guess that's probably a more important question. Limousine, okay.
Yeah, I think Limo sounds cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about it. But Plankton, I guess, works at Limo, is that correct? But it's like another ETH.link service?
Yeah, I'd like to hear more about that. Why I feel like this came up at some point when we were looking at other options to .link for ENSs.
Yeah, and I kind of think the like the long-term play is for there to be lots of different services that are like hosting ENS domains in various different domains, just so you have like a lot of redundancy to it. But there will be others. I don't know if they all need to start with L there.
Just extended an open invitation to you, Plankton, if you'd like to step on the stage here.
Oh, there you go.
This looks like Geronimo's hands up maybe as well.
I invited
trying
him.
to raise. Oh, I thought he was trying to raise the hand of Plankton and accidentally raised his own hand. I think there's also a question from Spicy Soup. Any tips for how to get tokens whitelisted for ARB1? I believe they are opening everything up on October 22nd, so there will be no whitelist. But I think it is kind of a little congested right now, but maybe someone else has insight.
I mean, I guess other than waiting for that to open up, you'd have to request it, right? And I'm not sure what kind of pace or what kind of backlog they're dealing with. If it's like relevant to Swapper, I think we'd be happy to maybe put in a word and try to encourage them to do it sooner rather than later.
But I definitely agree with what Spicy Soup is saying there. I think it's like the whitelist is very good for the like kind of as Arbitrum's guarded launch, but in terms of like the number of tokens that could be on Swapper, it limits the possibility just because there aren't as many tokens that could be in Arbitrum 1.
And welcoming Plankton to the stage.
Can you guys hear me?
Hello.
You guys hear me? Am I good?
It's a little bit faint. We can hear you, but it's a bit faint.
Yeah, is that any better?
Yeah, it's a bit better.
Okay. Well, at least for my understanding, we are the only other gateway right now outside of Cloudflare operating an ENS IPFS gateway. The reason we did this was because you have so many, DWeb and dApp developers using these, .eth Web3 websites, and we all know how bad .link's service can be. And so I'm not the developer by any means. That's technically Animal Hut. He's in the Keybase. But anyways, the long story of everything is that the goal of Limo is to be a decentralized set of nodes. So you would have multiple validators around the world that are trusted to basically give everybody, verifying this is what this is. Because something that we see possibly, we call this the Limo dilemma. And I don't know that a lot of people are even thinking about this, but there's a lot of security risk when you connect to these gateways because, you could have a man in the middle attack and somebody could be sending you, a different hash for a transaction that isn't what you want, and you get a lot of people that are probably rushing to mint an NFT, connecting their wallet to some website. There's a lot of security risks that are involved in doing these sort of things. And so with Limo, we do not log anybody's IP addresses. We don't do any fingerprinting. The eventual goal is to turn this into a DAO and have it sort of community ran and eventually as decentralized as possible. Right now it is centralized for sure. I mean, it's arguably more decentralized than Cloudflare because Cloudflare is this megacorp, conglomerate. But I find it kind of ironic that for the DWeb, everybody flocks to Cloudflare and Google Analytics when we should be doing the exact opposite and moving away from that. So yeah, Limo is meant to be a public good for anybody to use. We do not currently support subdomains yet, but we have a roadmap that we are working on, and it's only 2 people. It's literally me and Animal Hut, and we're both brothers in real life.
Could I ask why the name Limo?
Well, the reason Limo was chosen was because everybody's so used to using .link, and so since everybody knows link, you just delete the last two letters and replace it with mo, and it loads. So if you were going to an eat.link website, does it render? Just delete two characters and put mo.
Oh, yeah. I don't think anyone knows this, but so my first impression was having Limo on your product URL doesn't look serious, and I think already like having that link looks a little bit spammy. If someone gets a that link, like they don't understand ENSs, they don't understand exactly why we would use that kind of domain. We're already getting a lot of people asking like, why you guys using that kind of domain? So they don't understand it, first of all. And then I think using that limo takes it even one step further. It actually looks a little bit suspicious getting that kind of link. So have you guys thought anything about that?
Well, we've spoken with Brantley at ENS and Nick at ENS, and then actually, I don't know how much details I can go into. ETH.link was not supposed to be necessarily the original name for the IP or ENS IPF resolver. It was actually going to be ETH.show. But that gets into Virgil and the whole North Korea situation. It's kind of an insane story. But long story short, to my understanding, Virgil technically still has like ETH.link, in his possession. It's just being pointed to Cloudflare. So, I guess that's the question: is what would you change it to then?
Yeah, good question. I haven't actually checked what's available out there to have, but I think that limo it's very like it would be fun for some fun projects probably, but I think if you try to look serious, that limo kind of ruins it a little bit. Crypto is not that serious, even though it is serious, right? But just trying to remove as much friction as possible.
Well, there's a whole method behind the idea of the limo as well. When you think of so if you get into a limousine, you've got the separated compartments. So you've got the driver in the front, and then you've got the window that rolls up. The driver can't hear anything, let's just pretend, right? The driver can't hear anything that you're saying. So anything that's happening in the back of the limousine is totally private, and the limo driver is driving you to your destination safely, does not know what's happening, the conversation going on in the back. So that's kind of how we see limo. I don't really see it as being silly. It's just sort of an alternative to link. There was really no other, everybody falls into this, they're used to just using ETH.link. So if you were to mix it up and just change it to something totally random, I don't know. I'm not sure how you could create another name and not have people then questioning, regardless.
I think they will question. I agree with that. They're already questioning that link.
Yeah, I just want to say I think the name is great, but I don't know. I don't think I should have that big of opinion. I'm not really good with names, but just like on the project itself, I think this is super interesting. There were many discussions in the DXdao forum over the last year about the centralization risk, the usability risks, and sort of the uptime. And it was it's bad with Cloudflare. It was bad even before. And yeah, I think it's super interesting what you guys are doing. And I don't know, speaking as just a member of the DAO, but I would like to figure out how we could be a part of this and how we could contribute to this ecosystem, because we need to have something robust and decentralized that redirects if we want to actually have a decentralized web. So that's kind of
Totally. It's just having one entity, especially Cloudflare. Somebody can connect to a .eth website, with MetaMask or the right browser, but for the normie onboarding process, if you will, you're going to need this sort of Web 2 to Web 3 gateway, if you will, to really try to onboard people. But yeah, I mean, we this is being paid for out of pocket. There's no they're technically right now there is no sort of DAO or token. We have a Discord. We haven't dropped it yet. We will be doing that. Kind of want to add some CAPTCHA bots and stuff in there so it doesn't get taken over as soon as we post the link. But yeah, I mean, we're excited to be in this space. If you'd asked me, 6 months ago that we would be getting retweeted by IPFS, ENS, and Fleek, I would have never believed it. So it's pretty cool. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining on stage, and it's definitely a big need. I'm curious what you think is sort of like the end game here. Like, where are we going as a space to get to make it more decentralized? And if you want to kind of comment on what your plans would be with your service, DXdao Limo, too, that could be interesting.
So the ultimate goal would be to decentralize Limo infrastructure through like a community-run CDN. We obviously haven't figured out how that would work exactly yet, but essentially you would have a set of trusted validators, or people running Limo nodes that would be staking either some sort of governance token, something into them, and then they would be all coming to a consensus and validating that, yes, this is the correct information. We're early in the project. This obviously is not an easy undertaking, but nothing really truly is.
Yeah, understandable. And we were actually discussing using .limo when .link was down around the time that we had launched Swapper on Arbitrum, because it was a pretty sensitive moment for us, and .link had been down, I think, over a day. And I think the main reason we didn't go too far down that path and end up pointing to .limo, it's not really like using it per se, right? It's more like pointing to it in documentation and communications. Was just because it was a new thing, and I don't think there was much, like you said, it is a security concern, right? Like with the possibility of having attacks, like man-in-the-middle attacks or whatever, right? Phishing or something. Can you? And I think the main reason that we didn't go with Delaware was it was like a new entity. We didn't really know who you were. We didn't know if we could really have confidence in using the .limo service. And I mean, it's nice to hear from you now, but is there anything you could add in terms of like, why should people feel confident in you guys and the .limo service, and that like it's a safe service to use?
I mean, I guess the same question could be asked with everybody using ETH.link as well, though. I mean, you don't know what they're doing with your data. Other than trusting Cloudflare, all I can tell you is that we're tiny. We don't have the resources to pool the kind of information that Cloudflare would be able to pool on people. We don't track your IPs. We will eventually be open source, so anybody would be able to run their own gateway if they want. But as part of that, obviously brings big responsibility, because you could have malicious gateway actors. And so that's sort of the goal of Limo, is to be sort of a middleman for that, to be able to prove the validity of other gateways that pop up when they do. Because in theory, it is something that could be abused. But I mean, outside of us telling you that it's safe to use, no. Right now, there's nothing that we could show you. And it's kind of funny. I'm actually glad that you guys have brought this up, because we've referred to this as the Limo dilemma, because a lot of people were just using Limo, and one night Animal and I were just sitting there shooting the shit back and forth, and we found it interesting that people were just trusting it and using it, and while we're not malicious, there could be other malicious actors that would do something like this. And it goes back to people just don't understand how this works. Like, I don't think they understand the complexity, and what it takes.
Yeah, and I guess in crypto, there's a bit of a culture of aping into things when it's maybe not the wisest decision. But yeah, and I understand what the situation you guys are in, and this is certainly no dig at you guys, and really appreciate the effort and hope you are successful. but it is like, as much as I am inherently distrustful of centralized services, and like, that's why we're working in crypto. At the same time, if you're just making the decision between like, who do I think is more likely to attack like a service or like try to make a theft, right? Like I think I would trust a big company like Cloudflare over an individual, right? Or especially some non-individuals or people I didn't know. But like, yeah, the long-term goal, I think like definitely makes sense. But yeah, I think it's just hard to make that calculus like in the short term, right? Like, and I feel like that's going to be a challenge for Limo, right? If it's like, okay, trust a couple of non-developers, even though you may be, the best intention, I think that's a hard decision to make for a project.
No, totally. I mean, if you're confirming, the other thing too is like, if you're connecting, I don't know, let's just say you're using Limo, you connect to a website, on Swapper or whatever. I mean, if you're verifying the MetaMask transaction and it is going to the correct place, then, there's no problem. Like, the only way that somebody in theory could try to inject the wrong information is like if we were, if somebody was rerouting you to some sort of shitcoin or NFT or something. I mean, you'd be able to verify the transaction yourself that, what you're doing is what you're doing. It really would be somebody that's just not paying attention that would fall to that.
Gotcha. So there are ways to verify, and you can kind of rely on the fact of a community of like technically capable people is using it.
Correct. And I mean, that's part of the, if you see our little, man in the middle attack, this is something that we plan on trying to address in the future as more and more gateways will open. And part of this also is like testing. So like, if you run a D website, there's really no analytics that you can use really outside of Google. And there's no A/B testing. There's just a lot of things that are lacking when it comes to the D web. So yeah, we have a whole list of things that we would like to implement. It's going to take time since it's only 2 people. But yeah, we're excited to be in the space. We understand why people would be paranoid. It's crypto. It's good. You should be paranoid. You shouldn't really trust anybody. We probably won't stay anonymous forever. We're working on this DAO concept. It's just sort of a slow process trying to figure it all out,
Yeah, that's super cool, and yeah, I wish you guys the best, and hopefully we can support and maybe even use it in the future.
That would be awesome. And also Easteroids. We've been working a lot with Neiman and Tom Lightning. I guess for almost 3 months now. So I don't know if that adds for much, but Neiman can vouch for our validity. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. Yeah, we're in the early stages. I wouldn't even say technically alpha yet, so.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time, Plankton.
Yeah,
Much
thank you.
appreciated.
Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. Do we have any final questions here relating to any topic? I see a couple typing in chat. Some claps from Ross. Cool, guys. Well, thank you very much for participating in the now weekly DXdao community call. We'll end it here just over the top of the hour. And of course, thank you again to Plankton for coming in here at the end. Much appreciated. And we'd like to have more people from relevant communities and projects coming on and speaking on these calls. So thank you again, Plankton. And thank you everyone else for attending. And we'll see you next week, Thursday at 1500 UTC. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
There's some alpha leak here at
Bye-bye.
the very end.
Love me some Alpha Leak.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. See you, Graham.